"Dad, that's my brother." The little girl's voice cut through the bustling hotel lobby like a knife through silk. The words, so innocent, so certain, echoed with a weight that made several heads turn. Her small hand pointed directly at a boy about her age, maybe 7 or 8, being led toward the exit by a nervous-looking woman in a worn beige coat. The boy stopped confused and stared back. Jonathan Wexler, the billionaire CEO known for his brutal boardroom tactics, and an empire of luxury resorts, froze mid-step. His daughter, Eliza, had never said anything like that before. And the way her voice quivered, it wasn't one of her usual daydreams or imaginative tales. She meant it. He turned slowly toward the direction she was pointing, and his sharp, calculating eyes trained to read contracts and spot weaknesses fell on the boy's face, and that's when the color drained from his own. The resemblance was uncanny. The same dark curls, the same almond-shaped eyes that looked like they were always on the verge of asking questions. Even the mole just below the left ear, Jonathan's own mother used to tease him about it when he was young. That boy looked like a mirror of his childhood photos. "Eliza," he said, clearing his throat, trying to sound stern but only managing a whisper. "What did you just say?" "I said he's my brother," she repeated, tugging his hand. "He looks just like me, Daddy. Don't you see it?" The boy was still staring. The woman with him noticed and pulled him faster, whispering something to hurry him along. Jonathan took a step forward, but something in his chest tightened. Not fear, not anger. Something worse, recognition. He hadn't seen Julia Morgan in nearly 9 years. Not since that rainy evening in his old apartment when she'd stood at his door. Mascara streaked down her face, hands clutching a pregnancy test. Back then, she was his secretary at one of his satellite offices. Kind, soft-spoken, and impossibly sincere. He had loved her in the way powerful men love when they allow themselves weakness, quietly, and always with an escape route. She told him she was pregnant. He told her it wasn't the right time. She left. He never followed. And now that woman was walking out of his hotel with a boy that could have stepped out of his family album. "Wait here," Jonathan told Eliza, letting go of her hand. But the girl wouldn't. She clung to him, eyes wide. "No, Daddy, I want to talk to him. He's my brother. I can feel it." The words shouldn't have made sense, but Jonathan felt them pierce through layers of denial he had wrapped around that long-ago chapter of his life. He motioned for one of his security detail to watch Eliza as he strode across the lobby, cutting through the clamor of luggage wheels and concierge chatter. "Julia?" His voice came out louder than expected. The woman froze in her steps, stiffening like someone who had just heard a ghost call their name. She turned around slowly, holding the boy's shoulders, shielding him with her body. Jonathan approached, stopping a few feet away. "Is that him?" he asked, eyes flicking down to the child. "Is he mine?" Julia didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fierce, protective, and exhausted. She had aged but beautifully, with the same fire that once drew him in. Her grip on the boy tightened. "You don't get to ask that," she said bitterly. "Not after 9 years. Just answer me." The boy looked between them, confused. "Mom, who is that man?" Julia knelt beside him. "Just someone Mommy used to work with, sweetie." Jonathan's voice cracked. "What's his name?" She hesitated. Then, quietly, "Ethan." "Ethan." Jonathan felt the air leave his lungs. That name. He remembered suggesting it once in a sleepy conversation after a night of stolen hours in his penthouse. It was the name of his grandfather, a man he deeply respected. "You named him after my grandfather," he said. Julia stood up straight. "Because I wanted him to remember where he came from. Even if you didn't." Behind them, Eliza had wandered closer. She was now standing just feet away from her father and the boy she believed knew was her brother. "Hi," she said softly to Ethan. "I'm Eliza. You look like me." Ethan tilted his head. You look like me too." Julia's face softened for the briefest moment. Jonathan looked between his children, and something inside him cracked. For a man who had always believed in control, in structure, in legacy. This was a legacy he never prepared for. "I want to talk," he said to Julia. "Just you and me, please." Julia looked torn. Years of pain warred with the smallest flicker of something unresolved. She nodded once, slowly. "Tomorrow," she said, "if you really mean it." He did. Jonathan sat alone in the executive lounge of his own hotel, overlooking the skyline of Chicago as the city lights blinked like restless memories. His phone was off, his laptop untouched. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about shareholder reports or expansion strategies. He was thinking about Ethan. He hadn't slept much the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the boy's face. Eliza was right. Ethan looked just like her, but more than that, he looked like him. Jonathan Wexler, the billionaire playboy turned respectable tycoon, was a father of two. And only one of them knew it. Julia arrived 10 minutes late. She always hated being early to anything awkward. She walked into the room with that same quiet elegance he remembered, but her eyes were sharper now. She'd built armor around herself, forged from the wreckage he'd left behind. "Hi," he said softly, rising. "Don't," she replied, sitting across from him. "Let's not pretend we're old friends." "Fair enough." He poured her tea anyway. She always preferred chamomile, and slid it toward her without a word. She stared at it for a moment, lips tight, before finally taking a sip. "You want answers?" she asked, setting the cup down. "Let's make this quick." He exhaled. "Why didn't you come to me?" Julia laughed bitterly. "You mean after you shut the door in my face and told me it was a bad time?" "I was terrified, John. And I was alone, but I wasn't going to beg. I had dignity, even if I had nothing else." "I didn't think you'd keep it," he said. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Julia's face turned to stone. "Him, Jonathan. Not it. He's not a problem I solved. He's a person, a child." Jonathan rubbed his face, ashamed. "I was stupid. I know that now, but I want to fix it. I want to know him." "And then what?" she snapped. "Put him on your Instagram like some PR trophy? Squeeze him into your public image of fatherhood? He's not an accessory to your redemption arc." "That's not what I meant," he said, trying to keep calm. "I want to be his father. If he'll let me." Julia leaned forward. "He's not a file on your desk. You can't just open him up and read. He has feelings, questions, and he doesn't know who you are." Jonathan felt that like a punch. "What does he think?" "That his dad died before he was born," she said softly. "I thought it was kinder that way. He never had to feel rejected." It was quiet for a long time. The only sound in the room was the distant hum of the city below. "I want to change." "That," Jonathan said at last, "if it's not too late." Julia looked at him carefully. "It's not just about wanting. This isn't a merger, John. This is a little boy's life. If you really mean it, you don't get to just dip in and out when it gets hard." "I know," he said. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but if he's willing, I'll show up every single time." She nodded slowly, studying his face. "Then we start small. He doesn't know you're his father yet. I'll introduce you as a family friend, someone who used to know me a long time ago." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Okay. And we go at his pace," she added firmly. "No photos. No media. No surprises." "Agreed," she said, standing. "You can meet him tomorrow afternoon. The park on 86th and Lakeview. He likes the swings." Jonathan stood too, his heart pounding for a meeting that would define the rest of his life. As she turned to leave, he called out, "Thank you." Julia didn't look back. "Don't thank me. Just don't hurt him." The next afternoon, the park was full of life. Children ran barefoot through patches of grass. Mothers chatted under the shade of oaks. Dogs barked in the distance, and the smell of summer clung to everything. Jonathan sat on a bench beneath a tree, his nerves masked by a crisp navy suit and dark sunglasses. He spotted Julia first. She held Ethan's hand as they walked down the gravel path toward the playground. The boy was mid-story, animated, gesturing wildly. Julia was smiling in that half-distracted, wholly maternal way Jonathan remembered from long ago. Ethan ran ahead toward the swing set, dropping his backpack by the sand pit. Julia approached Jonathan slowly, her expression unreadable. "He thinks your name is Mr. John," she said. "Keep it simple." "Mr. John," Jonathan repeated, nodding. "Got it." She glanced over at Ethan. "He's been talking about Eliza, said she was really nice. Thought it was cool how much they looked alike." A lump formed in Jonathan's throat. "He's going to figure it out eventually." "Maybe," she said, "but not today." She walked off toward a shaded bench nearby, leaving Jonathan with the moment he had been preparing for and dreading for. The past 24 hours, he walked toward the swings. Ethan was pumping his legs, climbing higher into the air with each pass. His laughter was sharp and wild-free in a way Jonathan couldn't remember ever being. When he finally slowed down, Jonathan took the swing beside him. "Hey there," he said, unsure how to begin. "Hi," Ethan replied, eyeing him curiously. "You're that guy from the hotel, the one my mom talked to?" "Yeah," Jonathan said, nodding. "I'm Mr. John." "I remember," the boy said. "Are you Mom's friend?" "In a way," Jonathan said carefully. "I used to know her a long time ago, before you were born." Ethan kicked at the sand beneath his feet. "Did you like her back then?" Jonathan smiled. "Very much." "Why'd you stop being friends?" That question felt heavier than it should have. Sometimes grown-ups make dumb choices, even when they care about each other. Ethan nodded, like he understood too well for someone his age. "Mom says people leave sometimes, but she says she stayed. That's what matters." Jonathan looked at him, chest tight. "She did. And she's amazing." Ethan glanced at him again. "You look like me." Jonathan smiled gently. "You think so?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, and that girl from yesterday, Eliza? She looked like me too. Are you her dad?" The air caught in Jonathan's throat. He could hear the distant creak of a swing and feel the breeze shift. "Yes," he said. "I'm Eliza's dad." Ethan tilted his head. "So, are you my dad too?" Jonathan's heart stopped. He looked to Julia. She was frozen on the bench, her eyes locked on them. A silent plea for caution. He took a breath. "That's a really important question, Ethan, and one that your mom and I want to talk to you about. Together, when the time's right." Ethan nodded slowly, chewing the inside of his cheek. "Okay," Jonathan smiled. "But no matter what, I'm glad I get to know you now. If it's okay with you, I'd like to hang out sometimes." Ethan kicked the sand again. "Do you like video games?" Jonathan chuckled. "I'm terrible at them, but I can learn." "Then you can come over. I'll teach you how to beat Mega Dinobot." "Deal," Jonathan said, holding out his hand for a shake. Ethan grabbed it and didn't let go for a long moment. Jonathan could feel something settle in his chest. It wasn't peace exactly, not yet, but it was a start. Something real. As they walked back toward Julia, Eliza came running down the hill from the duck pond. She ran straight into Ethan with a squeal of excitement. "You came," she shouted. "Now we can play the sibling game again." Jonathan and Julia exchanged a glance. "The sibling game?" he asked. Eliza grinned. "It's where we pretend we're twins and solve mysteries." Ethan nodded. "We're working on a ghost story at the hotel. She says it's haunted." Julia looked at Jonathan. "They're already making stories." Jonathan nodded, emotion catching in his throat. "Let's give them a good one." That evening, after Julia and Ethan returned home, Jonathan sat at the edge of Eliza's bed. Her nightlight cast soft golden stars across the ceiling, and she clutched her stuffed elephant close to her chest as she blinked up at him. "Daddy," she said, in that sleepy, serious voice children only used when their hearts were wide open. "Is Ethan really my brother?" Jonathan hesitated. He'd practiced how he might answer this question all day. Dozens of versions had played through his mind, lawyerly responses, careful explanations, half-truths. But now, with her innocent eyes on him and her trust so raw and unguarded, he found only one answer that made sense. "I think he is," he said softly. "We're still figuring it out." Eliza furrowed her brow. "But how come you didn't know before?" He sighed, brushing her hair back gently. "Because sometimes adults make mistakes, big ones, and I didn't know he was mine. Not until yesterday." She was quiet for a moment. "Are you mad?" "No, sweetheart," he whispered. "I'm not mad. I'm sorry." She reached up and touched his cheek. "If he's my brother, does that mean I get to see him a lot?" Jonathan nodded. "That's the plan." "Good," she said with a yawn. "I like him. He's smart. He doesn't talk too much. He's like me, but a boy." Jonathan chuckled, even as his chest ached. "Yeah, you're both pretty amazing." She curled deeper into her blanket. "We'll all be a family now?" He kissed her forehead. "We'll do our best, okay?" She nodded and closed her eyes. Jonathan sat with her until she drifted to sleep, then walked to his study and shut the door. He stared out at the city, his reflection superimposed on the skyline. For a man who once prided himself on having control over everything, the past 48 hours had torn him apart. And strangely, he didn't want to put the pieces back the same way. He reached for his phone. "Julia," he said when she picked up, her voice groggy from sleep. "I want to set up a trust for Ethan. I want to make sure his future is secure, no matter what." There was a long pause. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said. "And I'd like your help doing it right." "Okay," she said. Quietly, he could hear Ethan playing something in the background, probably that Dinobot game. "And Julia?" "Yes? Thank you for raising him so well, for not giving up. For everything." Her voice was steady. "You have a long road ahead, Jonathan. He might forgive you, or he might not. But at least now, you're walking toward him." He hung up, his heart heavier but cleaner. They decided to have a casual dinner at a small Italian restaurant, one that Julia used to love. Nothing fancy, just pizza, pasta, and candlelight. Eliza and Ethan got a table of their own, playing a quiet game of tic-tac-toe on napkins while their parents sat nearby. "Ethan asked me today if you're going to be around all the time now," Julia said, sipping her wine. Jonathan looked down. "What did you tell him?" "I said I don't know yet," she replied. "Because I don't, and neither does he." Jonathan nodded. "That's fair, but I also told him you were trying, and that matters." He looked at her, years of silence and regret pooling between them. "I've been trying to be a better man for years," he said. "But I think I was doing it in the wrong places." Julia studied him carefully. "Do you want to be his father, or do you just feel guilty?" That question landed hard. "I want to be his father," he said, slow and certain. "But I feel guilty too. I should have fought for you. For him, I didn't. That's on me." They sat in silence as their kids laughed nearby. "You know," Julia said finally, "when I found out I was pregnant, I told myself I'd never let him feel unwanted. Not even for a second. I didn't have a father growing up, and I knew what that hole felt like." Jonathan's voice cracked. "I want to help fill it, if he lets me." She nodded. "One step at a time." Ethan ran up then, tugging on Jonathan's sleeve. "Can you come outside? There's a guy doing tricks with fire." Jonathan smiled, standing. "Let's go." Julia watched them through the window, the boy running ahead, the man walking just behind, cautious but willing. For the first time in a decade, she allowed herself to hope. The next few weeks passed with a strange and cautious rhythm. Ethan and Eliza began spending more time together, weekends at the Science Museum, movie nights at Julia's apartment, even a Sunday picnic in the botanical gardens. They were like magnets, drawn by something deeper than shared hobbies or age. They knew, even if no one had told them out loud yet, that Jonathan kept his distance at first. He knew he couldn't barge into Ethan's life, so instead, he waited. He showed up. He learned. Slowly. On a crisp Saturday afternoon, Jonathan invited them all to his lake house 2 hours outside the city. It wasn't the usual cold business retreat he used for clients or donors. This time, he'd taken down the sterile decor, replaced framed accolades with photo collages of Eliza, childhood drawings, old books. It was his attempt to make something warm, something real. Julia hesitated, but finally agreed. The kids loved it. They ran barefoot across the wide deck, chasing each other through the breeze and pine-scented air. Jonathan grilled badly and ended up ordering takeout. Everyone laughed. After dinner, the four of them sat on a blanket under the stars. The fire pit crackled as sparks danced up into the sky. And then Ethan asked the question no one had rehearsed for. "Mom," he said, turning toward her. "Can I ask you something?" Like a big something. Julia's heart skipped. "Of course, baby." He looked over at Jonathan, then back to her. "Is Mr. John my dad?" The silence was complete. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. Eliza sat up straight, suddenly alert. Julia looked to Jonathan. He gave her a slight nod. This was her moment to lead, her story to open. She took a deep breath, pulled Ethan into her lap and said, "Yes, sweetheart." "He is." Ethan stared at her. Not angry, not sad, just ... Wide-eyed. "All this time?" He whispered. "I didn't want to confuse you," she said softly. "I wanted you to feel safe, loved. You were never a secret to him." But he didn't. "No, not until recently." Jonathan stepped closer. "She's right. I didn't know you were my son, Ethan, and when I found out, I was scared, not of you, but of how much I'd missed." Ethan looked down at his fingers, then at Eliza. "So we are brother and sister?" Eliza smiled. "I told you." Jonathan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "I want to be in your life, Ethan, if you'll let me." The boy didn't say anything right away. Then he leaned into his mother and whispered, "Do I have to call him Dad?" Julia looked at Jonathan. "You can call him whatever you want. There's no rush." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay." The stars above twinkled as if something big had been lifted. Something old and hidden, finally given light. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep in the guest room, twin sleeping bags, heads tilted toward each other, Julia Jonathan on the back porch. She brought 2 mugs of hot tea and sat beside him in the quiet. "You handled that well," she said. "I was terrified." "I could tell," she smirked. They sipped their tea. Jonathan looked out at the dark trees. "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" Julia tilted her head. "I think kids forgive easier than we do, but they don't forget. You'll have to earn it. Over time, consistently." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Julia looked over at him, and for a moment, the walls between them faded. Not entirely, but enough to breathe. He asked if he could stay here again next weekend. She said quietly. "I said yes." Jonathan smiled. "I'd love that." As they sat together, not quite family but not strangers anymore, the night held a new kind of peace. Not perfect, not simple, but honest. And that was something. Asterisk. The following weekend, the lake house came alive again with the sound of children's laughter. This time, Ethan didn't hesitate when he jumped into the lake with Eliza. He didn't ask permission. He didn't wait for approval. He simply ran, leapt, and lived. And when Jonathan saw him surface, hair plastered to his forehead, face beaming with joy, it hit him just how much he had missed. Not just birthdays, And school plays and first words, he had missed this. The simplicity. The trust. Ethan now called him John, but with less formality, less hesitation. Julia said that was a big step. Eliza had taken to calling them Team J, short for Jonathan Julia, and Junior, her nickname for Ethan. Jonathan had never wanted a traditional life. He was the kind of man who chose boardrooms over ball games, penthouses over playgrounds. But now, as he stood over the grill again, this time managing not to burn anything, and watched Ethan teach Eliza how to skip rocks, he realized something. He didn't need perfection. He just needed presence. Later that night, as the kids slept again, Ethan clutching the new baseball glove Jonathan had surprised him with, Eliza sleeping beside him like they'd always shared space, Julia sat beside Jonathan on the porch, just like the weekend before. This time, the air felt different. Calmer. This is the longest you've ever stayed in one place, she said with a smile. I think I found a reason to stay, he replied. They sat in silence for a long while. The lake glimmered under the moonlight, like a mirror to their past and their future. You know, Julia began, I used to dream about this. Not the lake house, not the money, just ... The four of us, somewhere simple. You flipping pancakes. Badly, Eliza rolling her eyes. Ethan telling terrible knock-knock jokes. Jonathan smiled. I'm good with waffles. She laughed softly. Close enough, he turned to her, more serious now. I can't erase what I didn't do, Julia. But if you and Ethan let me, I want to spend the rest of my life doing more. Being better, not just a part-time visitor, but something real. She studied him for a long moment. This isn't about you becoming a hero. It's about you becoming human. I want that, he said. For them, for you, for me. Julia's eyes shimmered. Then don't stop showing up. Asterisk. A year later, the courtroom was quiet. Not because of a scandal, but because of a formality. Jonathan Wexler stood beside Julia and Ethan as the judge finalized the paperwork. Custody agreement, visitation rights. A name change not legal, but symbolic. Ethan Morgan Wexler. It was a new chapter. Afterward, Eliza held Ethan's hand as they walked out into the sunlight. So, she grinned, can we tell everyone at school now? Ethan nodded shyly. Julia turned to Jonathan. You nervous? He chuckled. More than I was before my IPO. Good, she said. Because this one's worth more. Jonathan looked at her, at his son, at his daughter, and at the life he once thought impossible. Let's go home, he said. And this time, it wasn't a penthouse or a retreat or a corporate suite. It was wherever they were together.